Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Will the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the South Burlington School Board meeting. And we'll start with any comments from the public regarding items that are not on the agenda. All right, seeing none, I will move on to any amendments to the agenda.
We have one amendment. We're going to remove the Rick Marcotte playground bid from the consent agenda. It's going to be removed completely from here. We'll come back to you at the next meeting. It's towards the bottom.
So that's agenda item 18 on bids. Okay.
And actually, I forgot to mention this before. This might only take a few minutes, but I know that the Vermont School Board Association is looking to plan on going to boards in the next year to do policy governance. We may want to just spend a couple minutes talking about what we would want them to do for us.
Okay, so can we add that to like a 14A?
Yeah,
just
to figure out our next step, to figure out what kind of feedback to give them.
Okay. All right, any other amendments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to announcements.
We don't have our students. One graduated and the other one is not available to us. But I don't have any formal announcements other than the fact that we have passed the end of the school year, and I greatly appreciate the board's attendance at the graduation on the 13th. So we've graduated a successful group of students onto their next step. Again, I thought that was an excellent ceremony, and again, appreciate your attendance. In addition, there's been numbers of celebration. 8th grade, obviously, move up days from 5th grade to 6th grade here at the middle school. Academic awards and sports outcomes, have been certainly very prevalent towards the end of the year. So again, a lot to be proud of. A lot of good work by, our students and staff in making that happen. So.
Good. Yeah, congratulations to all of you for finishing another school year.
The only other thing I would say is we met with our legislators just recently, actually, and I think it's worth noting around kind of post-legislative session. This is the first time we've done that in quite some time. Usually, for those listening to this, we generally meet with them before they start up, and I think everybody's minds are quite busy and quite engaged and maybe not 100% present. So this was at least the first step in talking a little bit more about some of the items that were closed and where we're going as a city together. So I thought that was helpful.
Yeah, and my take on that, we didn't have a lot of representation at the breakfast, but the feedback that we did get was that our legislators really suggested strongly that we be proactive with meeting with them over the summer in order to prepare for the fall legislative session, so that they are informed about some of the issues that affect public education. So that was a takeaway, I think, on our part. All right. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6, city-school collaboration.
And I think that kind of seconds is the summary for the city school. That was in part, and those of you who don't know, but city manager and Pam McKenzie and Elizabeth and I have been meeting on a regular basis. This was an outcome of that one of those initiatives, and the legislative breakfast was one of them. So I think, again, positives to that collaboration. Thank you.
Good. All right, agenda 8, an update on the Methadone clinic appeal, which we do have an update on.
Did you skip 7?
Did I? I'm sorry, I did. Yeah, I jumped right over it. Sorry. We'll move back to, wow, I just counted a whole group in the audience here. Move back to agenda item 7, the South Burlington Energy Committee.
Yeah. So I think we'll do this in 2 parts, and welcome South Burlington Energy Committee. I do also want to say I want to be sensitive to time for the board members. Again, we all looked at each other, I think, and everyone said, "Wow, we saw you just yesterday," or the day. So they've spent a lot of time. So I'm trying to be mindful of time. So two parts. One kind of would be introducing the Energy Committee and a quick overview of Energy Committee, as we said at the last meeting on June 11th. Is that right? June 11th. And then we do have in front of the board tonight for action is the city school solar lease landfill array project. So perhaps we can fold those in together, but certainly on behalf of the board, we certainly appreciate, no pun intended, your energy and efforts in this area. But perhaps Don Cummings is here, and maybe I'll start with you, Don, and let you kick it off.
I'm Don Cummings. I'm currently the chair of the Energy Committee. We have many members here. Keith Epstein, Marcy Murray, Linda McGinnis is a volunteer, not yet a committee member, and Alana is a staff person who supports us very well. I have a few slides I'd like to show if I could, and Steve's going to help me with that, projecting, I think, on that screen. First, let me just say that the Energy Committee was put in place around 2008 with the objective to help the city and the city's residents reduce their reliance on fossil fuels for two reasons. One, we're concerned about the impact of fossil fuels, but we're also concerned about the escalating cost of fossil fuels and the fact that most of that money that we pay every day for our fossil fuels, non-fossil fuel derived energy, including electricity, ends up outside the state. Our energy, even our Green Mountain Power money that we pay our Green Mountain Power bills, a lot of that ends up out of state. Some of it out of the country. As you know, we rely heavily on Hydro-Quebec. So we've been working over the last 6 years on projects. We've met with a fair amount of success. It's always been our goal to engage the community in a broader way. And it so happens this last fall we had this opportunity basically fall in our lap. The Georgetown University, I think you all are familiar with that wonderful institution, has developed a program where they've invited communities between 5,000 and 250,000 residents to participate in a competition. And the end result of the competition, the community that succeeds will win a $5 million prize that has to be used in the community for energy-related benefits. So we could use it for anything we can really justify in that regard. They're using the concept of a prize because the prize has elicited very dramatic results in the past. Largely technology results. You see the SpaceX program, even modern navigation, it was a result of a prize. So they're trying to develop breakthrough thinking, creating a sustainable energy-saving environment that could be propagated to communities around the country. So they offered this prize to any community that wants to take it up. The last I knew in late April, there were 52 communities that were engaged in applying. I think there are more now. They want to tap our creativity to try to crack this nut, which is getting people to behave differently, to think differently, behave differently in terms of their consumption and their investments. The time frame for this, it starts January 1st, 2015, and it runs for 2 years. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve to develop programs and get things rolling before 2015 so that when we hit the ground running with programs that are already starting to accrue savings. If we don't win the prize, we still win. There's large economic benefits for the community at large. If we save, I think I did some rough math, the state uses about $2.5 billion worth of fossil fuel derived, or energy, let's just say large energy including electricity, fuel oil, transportation, and all that sort of stuff. South Burlington, just on a ratio of our population, would use about 80 to 100 million. Now, a good deal of that's transportation, and this program does not address transportation. But if we could chip away 5%, 10% of that spending, and it's going to stay in our economy. It's not going to go to Canada. It's not going to go overseas. It's going to work in our economy. So even if we don't win the prize, there's financial benefit for the community at large. We also see this as a community building opportunity, getting people engaged in a common cause for the good of all of the residents in South Burlington. So Steve, if I could have the next slide, please. The competition is targeting 3 specific areas. It's residential, electricity and natural gas use, municipal, the city's buildings, and natural gas use, including facilities like the wastewater treatment plant, and public school electricity and natural gas. So our plan to win with this is we're going to pick strategies that have big potential payback, but where we can find a strong partner to help us. There's 10 members of the Energy Committee. Changing the behaviors of 18,000 people in the city isn't going to happen because it's just 10 people. We need to enlist strong partners who can execute, like Green Mountain Power, like Vermont Gas, like Efficiency Vermont, like the City Council. The city has approved our participation in this program. We have 2 city councilors who often come to our meetings to encourage our efforts. We have a volunteer marketing firm that's working with us because we think a lot of this is getting people's attention to the opportunity here and getting them to act. We'd like to count South Burlington School System as a strong partner as well. That's why we're here. So next slide, please. What counts? And this is, let me just focus on the green line, competition, performance. There's 2 stages of making it to the end in here. The first stage is you have to do very well about saving energy. If you do very well about saving energy, you're whittled down into a much smaller group. There may be 10 of us, and I'm counting on us being in that 10, that will then be evaluated on the further criteria. Innovation, what cleverness have you brought to the project? Potential for replication, where can we do this elsewhere? Likely for future performance. Are these programs likely to be sustainable and additive over time? Equitable access, community and stakeholder engagement. That's why we're working hard on partners, for one thing. Education is in itself 10%, but it's counted up in the performance as well. If you recall, we have to do well on saving energy in the school system as well. And then an overall kind of a subjective assessment on the quality and success overall. Steve, if I could have the next slide. South Burlington school system is a perfect partner for us. If you look at the history, and this is just a snapshot of the high school, from 2008, there's a dramatic drop after the 2008 time frame, because you had a partner in here who was working with the school system, and they found lots of things, and the school system did a lot of things. But you can see even since then, there's been a decline. We're on a downward trend. So your facilities team has done a marvelous job. And this is representative of all the schools. I just picked the high school, but almost all the schools show the same trend. So the facilities team's done a marvelous job lately, basically doing it through their maintenance budget. And when something's broken, they work with Efficiency Vermont, Vermont Gas, find the best incentives for the most efficient solution to whatever just broke. So, which is an ideal philosophy if you are careful or concerned about spending that you'd have to do. Can I have the next slide, please? So, but we see more opportunities within the school district, if you will. We've been working with David and his staff, Stuart, several teachers, the facilities teams. We've been talking since last fall. We've kind of found 3 broad categories where there's opportunity, if you will. More facilities improvements, renewable energy, which we're going to talk about in a second, and integrating energy into the curriculum. So let me talk about facilities improvements. I didn't introduce Tim Perrin. Tim Perrin's our representative who works for the city. He's from Efficiency Vermont. Efficiency Vermont will work with the city and the school system, and has in the past, to identify more opportunities. They provide funding for things that make sense from an energy reduction standpoint. So what I'm asking here, or suggesting here, is that we continue with the programs we've been doing. I think we could ramp them up, and I'd like for you to consider not just making efficiency upgrades with maintenance budgets, but finding a way to combine projects that make economic sense and doing them all at once, and finding a financing vehicle where the financing costs are paid for by the energy savings. So, and there are opportunities to find financing like this. The city is exploring the same concept for combining a bunch of energy projects and financing them such that the financing pays for, or the reduced cost in the energy pays for the projects. The benefit is we do all those things we would do over the next 6 or 8 years, except we do them now, and we start accruing savings. Once the notes are paid, the financing is paid down, those savings goes directly to your bottom line. Renewable energy, we're going to talk about that in a second. This proposal that the city has offered stands on its own merits. It's very low risk, very little work, as we'll see in a few minutes. There may be others, because this will only take a fragment of, or a big piece of your energy demand. There may be other opportunities, which we'd like your support to, once we get the landfill project underway, let's consider some other things. Let's be open-minded about a couple of other things. Low risk or no risk, no cost up front, very little operating involvement on the part of the staff. The last part, which we've been talking to teachers, we just had a meeting this afternoon, continuing that discussion, is there's already work to change the curriculum. There's already requirements underway. There's strengthening areas in the science curriculum. The high school, they were just talking about the whole school energy challenge. There are lots of pieces of the puzzle that are going on. So just as an awareness, we are working with teachers and curriculum groups to try to integrate some energy understanding, more energy understanding, the issues we face, and use some of these projects as hands-on projects for the students to, tune up their analysis skills, their problem definition, solution development, planning skills, and so on. Next slide, please. So I mentioned key partners that are very important to us. We, of course, are a partner here to help you. Efficiency Vermont's a partner. Vermont Gas, Encore Renewables, we're going to hear in a minute, is the developer of the landfill project. They could help you with other solar projects. And Vermont Education, what is the V?
Energy Education.
Energy Education. It's a program that actually provides things you can insert into your curriculum to help teach people. Last slide. So what's next? I'd like your support when people talk about energy programs. I would like your support, at least your consideration for future things that people might come forward where if there are more cost-saving energy efficiency upgrades and that there are ways to finance them that are cost neutral or cost positive or cash flow positive for you. Consider proposals for energy, renewable energy, as you're doing this afternoon or this evening, and to help us support the concept of integrating real-world energy projects into curriculum so that the students can actually see these things unfold and help these projects unfold. And lastly, if we could have a letter of support, perhaps from David, that simply says, with no specifics about what programs you're going to undertake, but simply that says the school board supports the intention to become more energy efficient. We support the goals of the Georgetown University, our efforts at the Georgetown University Energy Prize. That would be a big help. Any questions?
Should we do? Open up to board questions?
I guess I really have a question of our administrators here, John and David, and that is, do you have an opinion on this? Have you thought about it? Have you had a chance to think about it?
I mean, to say I know, 100% about the program, the Georgetown Energy Project program, would be wrong. I mean, what I can tell you is that, at least positively, is that we've been engaged, as Don said, we've been engaged for quite some time through the good work of many around us. John Stewart, our facility folks, our head electrician, as Don indicated, we've been at it. Again, some time ago now, probably 8 years ago, maybe not. John Everett obviously went into, we worked with an outside consulting group to come in and begin really looking closer at it. So I'm very supportive of the work. I'm supportive of the South Burlington Energy Committee. I think that it's always a fine balance for me, and you know this, and that's something I'm really wanting to be watchful of, is the resources in which are perhaps deterred from, providing the focus work that we need to be, and that's educating of children. Do I see there's some natural connects? Absolutely. But when it comes to, administrative time involved to make some of those things happen, I have to be somewhat cautious. At the present time, as indicated, Efficiency Vermont, the Energy Committee have certainly come to us with what I think are very viable opportunities and easy implementations to the present. As far as knowing more about this program into the out years or what that might entail, I can't speculate on that, but I would only say to you that I want to be mindful of the resources and may have to say it's a good idea, but we don't have the resources at the present time to do that. Can you help us, or can you do it? Those are, I think, are really important pieces for us. So supportive of the work. They've been around a while with us, and we've done a lot of good things already together.
John?
I want everybody to look at the lights. They'll be here through July 27th, and then our facilities department, working with Efficiency Vermont, these will all be replaced with new energy efficient lights, and we're also replacing the ceiling, that whole structure, because so what you said, Don, about our facility department, they just look for this kind of stuff, and it's in the operating budget. It's not even highlighted because it's one of the things we put some money in, not a lot of money, but we partner with Efficiency Vermont and get a lot done. And that's why we don't have the middle school curve there, but we would see that.
Sure.
So
I had a question about, could you tell me a little bit more about how you envision integrating it into the curriculum? That's the first part of my question. And the second is, has it sort of been vetted through administrators, and are they in support of this integration into the curriculum?
Yeah,
and
we've been, I'll answer that.
Okay.
We've been meeting and talking on pretty much a monthly basis, sometimes in generalities, in terms of what things may look like. As I've reported before, in the next 2 years and for full implementation in 16-17, the state of Vermont has next generation science standards. Those science standards are a lot more involved in engineering and in performance, and many of them align with these kinds of activities. One of the things we have been really clear with the Energy Committee is we're not going to do this twice, throw energy where it isn't right now in the curriculum and then change the curriculum again. As we grow into the new science curriculum, we'll be looking for those opportunities that are already there. Also, because of the kind of discussions we've had at the high school between the department under Phil Sirks and the Green Team, with Matt Dransfield, students have taken up some of these issues, And that's when they're talking about the Vermont Energy Challenge as a school-wide challenge. They've talked with their administrators about it, and it's really a student initiative. When Phil was at CVU, you know, they did similar work. So it's that opportunity to really integrate into a community sense, not just into science, even though some of the leadership comes there, that's been discussed. And the project-based education that already exists here at the middle school, some of those projects have been around issues of energy already. So it's about the things we've already been doing, and then some of it's just habits, you know, making sure that, you know, we work with teachers about turning off lights and things that we want all our kids to learn to be, you know, thoughtful in terms of energy use. So, you know, there's the short term and the long term, but, you know, these are all things that we really need our kids to learn and be responsible. So it's been a discussion. Paul Yoon came to our meeting today from the middle school. Phil was there. So we've begun to have those discussions.
Are there representatives in the audience from Encore or Vermont Gas or Green Mountain Power?
Encore is here.
Okay.
Efficiency Vermont is here, but not Vermont Gas or Green Mountain Power.
Okay. I guess I was curious to know, well, maybe the Encore representative can speak. What is the role Encore plays in what's being proposed here? And how is your organization structured?
Sure. Would you like me to come forward?
Sure, yeah, you can get near that mic here. Thanks. If you want to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Can I sit?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, folks. My name is Chad Farrell. I am the principal of Encore Redevelopment. We are a Burlington-based development shop focused on renewable energy. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I'm also a City of South Burlington resident. My kids aren't in the school district yet, but they will be. A few years to go here. So, yeah, we are here to present the school district with an opportunity. We have sat down with David briefly.
Could I?
Please.
So Chad's here on a specific mission to talk about the landfill project, but
Yep.
your role so far, Chad has been a strong partner with the city. We did an RFP. We solicited firms to come to the city who could ferret out the best opportunities for solar for us. That's what Chad's been doing for the last couple of years. We've installed something at Dorset Street. He's leading the charge. We did an investigation of the police department. That didn't quite work. He's been doing all the legwork for the landfill project. So when we need something solar, I had a conversation with Chad. We just had a conversation with Chad about a potential area for Georgetown that he might be able to help us with. So his focus is largely on what can he help us with in terms of getting solar.
And
so I think you may want to do your discussion about the landfill in a minute. Is that right? We'll finish this up. Would you like to?
I mean, honestly, I'm trying to understand the various entities and who's asking for what and when and what's the level of commitment. And frankly, I think Dan's comment is spot on, is the board's going to look to our administrators for a specific recommendation of what they would like us to support in terms of specific initiatives. But I know I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around everything that's going on, and my biggest concern is our primary mission is delivering a quality public education, and we've even recently given our superintendent some feedback about kind of getting back to basics. So we know that there's a cost to being distracted with non-core projects, I'll put it in that category, that can cause us not to be delivering on our primary mission. Certainly there is areas to complement it, but I am trying to understand who's who and who's asking for what.
So the Energy Committee is a subset of the South Burlington government. Mm-hmm. The South Burlington city government has applied to participate in the Energy Prize. We're the vehicle that's making it happen. So we're their executive branch, if you will, to make that happen. we're picking partners that can help us. And a partner who's in the room is Efficiency Vermont. So Efficiency Vermont has a list of opportunities for the city. We are working with the staff to create a list. They are working for you for free to help identify energy-saving opportunities. Furthermore, they come through with some proposals where they partly fund the proposal. And it would be up to the city or the South Burlington School District to find the remaining funding, and thus the discussion about finding finance programs, which Tim is very, very knowledgeable about, that where we can combine the projects that they recommend will help finance with rebates. The city is working on a financing program. They can share their learning on that financing program. Efficiency Vermont can help us with that. So we are an extension of the city's staff. We would consider ourselves an extension of your staff, and all of our partners are extensions of your staff. Vermont Gas, if you ask them, and I believe they have been in the building. They've made recommendations about boiler upgrades, not boiler upgrades, but burner upgrades. I think they have incentives to help you do that. So they're an extension of your staff if you're willing to do that. Mike, the facilities team is very interested in doing these things. So, and they've shown that by that curve that continues to go. So I understand your concern about taking your eye off the ball. I think one of the other missions or one of the other things that you must consider, and you do this all the time, is consider the financial ramifications of the spending programs that you have. And if you can find opportunities to reduce your spending with support from partners who are trying to help you carry the load, that's probably a good thing to do. Plus, some of these activities we're talking about provide learning opportunities for your students as well. So I agree with you. You can't understand this whole thing in 20 minutes. It's taken us 6-9 months to get to where we are with the administration, the teachers, and with Stuart and facilities team. What we'd like is your support in continuing these discussions. We don't have anything specific to Georgetown that we're asking for you to approve today, except that in the future you will be open-minded if the administration comes forward with new ideas, and that you would support in general the principles that it makes sense to reduce energy use in the city because it's going to save us money, which in the end is what we're trying to do to win this prize. So
Thank you, I appreciate that summary. Yes.
I just wanted to add, I think that there's, because of the presentation that was made last year, I can see how there might be a little bit of confusion. I think in the Georgetown University Energy Prize and the work that the South Burlington Energy Committee is trying to do, there's one category that's efficiency and reduction in your actual demand in your use. There's another category that's shifting your actual electric generation to renewables, and that's why Chad is here. And then there's a third area, which is curriculum. And those are 3 different areas, all of which we would like to be able to support you in any way that we can. But the first 2, the energy efficiency and the shifting to renewables, will bring you financial savings. And part of what we would like from you is 2 things this evening. One is just a general support that you'll be a partner in the Georgetown University Energy Prize. Just as a partner, we don't have to go into specifics, although we've had lots of discussions with a number of your administrators. And the second thing is to see if we can move ahead on the partnership with the city on the solar, the landfill. And for that, Chad can answer any of the questions that you have. We sent you some questions and answers earlier. I don't know if you had the chance to look at them or not, but this is an opportunity to ask him directly any questions that you have with the city arrangement on the solar landfill.
So, if there are those 3 branches of what's going on, what I think I'm hearing is that we already do 2 of them anyway. Are you asking us to do anything different in education and anything different in energy efficiency efforts than we're currently doing?
yes.
Do you have any specifics?
Well, there are about a half a dozen burner upgrades that we could do all at once, and right now we're doing them.
Those upgrades have been in our plan for some time, haven't they, John?
We've done
some.
Yes,
three or
done some
four
of
over
them.
the last few years, yeah.
And they're being done as funds allow. And what we're suggesting is, let's do them now. Let's look at the
You're gonna pay
dishwasher.
for 'em? You got somebody that's gonna pay for them?
Efficiency Vermont and Vermont Gas provide incentives.
Incentives.
And the remainder,
That sounds like it's not the total cost.
it is not the total cost. There are financing systems, VITA financing, for example. The city is investigating VITA financing for programs, I think it's under 50,000, I'm really out of my element here, at a very low interest rate, so that the payment on the borrowed funds would be calculated to be less than the projected energy savings on installing those burners, for example. If we're going
Well,
to do
there are
them,
two issues here. One is cash flow and one is return on investment, okay? And we are very sensitive to cash in the short term.
I appreciate
And
that.
so incentives sometimes work and sometimes don't work in that regard. So my concern is that we don't have any specifics here that we can look at
That's right.
for the numbers.
Right.
And so it's going to be very hard for me to sign up for something where I don't know what I'm signing up for, okay?
And I'm not asking you to sign up
Now,
for,
and that's different from perhaps what we're talking about on the cost sharing for the energy savings sharing on the solar thing, because that seems to have, and I'd really like to understand that too, it seems to have, to my understanding so far, no negative cash flow period for us at all. There's never a period of time in which we have a negative cash flow. So that's a somewhat different story. And on the education side, is there anything you're asking us to do different on the education side than what you've heard from the administration so far?
well, let me just address the cash flow, if I could. If we did those burners this year, just before the heating season, you're going to see a significant improvement in the heating efficiency of the boiler system in these
When will it pay
buildings.
back? When will it pay back?
I don't know. I'm not asking you to approve a project. I'm asking you to consider projects that we
Well,
could.
I asked you what you wanted us to do different from what we're doing as a part of this agreement, and you told me you wanted us to invest in this stuff.
Right.
So I took that as we need to make a commitment to invest in that stuff. If you want us to consider doing these things, that's quite a different story.
That's the point.
That-
It's just
In
that is
fact,
my
I
re-
believe we're considering them all the time, and I don't know what's different that you're asking
Well,
for.
I think what I'm hearing, Dan, is that it isn't fundamentally different, but it's potentially bundling and accelerating some energy savings projects and really going through the same analysis that our business office would normally go through that says this is what we'd have to invest, which would largely be a larger incremental investment than we currently have in our capital stewardship plan, but that would there would be a total project cost-benefit savings associated with potentially these rebates or whatever. But it would be a project that would go through exactly the same channels we normally go through. And I guess
Certainly fine.
my response to that is just that it is a resource in administration that they would have to, we would look to our superintendent to make a decision about prioritizing use of a resource or multiple resources as necessary in any project consideration. But did I paraphrase that?
You did a beautiful job.
So I see no reason, unless the board directs differently, to provide a letter of support. Again, I think we as a district have a strong track record of doing a lot of innovative things, as you've already heard. I see no reason why a letter of support for that continuation. Actually, it's probably an appropriate succession plan to our energy work that we've done in the past, and it empowers the South Burlington Energy Committee to essentially work with us, for us, as that agent. So again, as long as there's clear understanding that there's no committal, that the return on the investments and pieces of that would need to be factored in, and in fact, we are the board is the final say on that. I see no reason for a concern at the present time.
Dan had one part of his question I didn't, which was what's different about the curriculum? Well, since we've been talking, I don't know if it's just a raised awareness, but we've had Phil and Matt in the room. We've had Stuart in the room thinking about energy and how this could help, how these things could help the learning process. It's not something we necessarily proposed. We probably brought the VEEP organization into the picture, which brought some curriculum things in there. We stimulated their thinking. It's these ideas, by just talking about energy and how could we change our teaching process considering energy, these guys came up with ideas, and they will continue to come up with ideas. And so that's all I'm suggesting there. As support the process where we're talking and they're coming up with ideas that will not affect the long-term plan that Stuart had outlined, but they're things that they're doing now that just make sense to do.
And Don, I'd like to add also just looking for a long-term shift in culture. There have been a couple missed opportunities when we helped facilitate transferring the grant that allowed the solar panels to be put next to the turf on the building. That was actually part of an educational grant from the Department of Energy, and the intention was to really bring students into that. Steve had a lot of great ideas, and the ball kind of got dropped on that. So, and then also the Earth System Science class, which was created for the high school several years ago. Great idea, great intentions. My daughter went through that. They didn't have time to do the renewable energy piece. They ran out of time. So just also that, just really getting it into the culture. I mean, this work is going to affect our kids' futures in terms of building that awareness, having them become more sensitive to these issues, I think is very important. And if, as a culture within the district, we can really put, as parents, administrators, teachers, really put emphasis on how important this is. I think that's a benefit that could come out of this, just raising our priorities.
All right, so we are way over our time on the agenda here. I'm wondering, David, how we want to address that. It looks like there's specific action that was requested on the solar lease specifically. Mm-hmm. How would you propose we handle it? I guess I'd open it up first. It will, any specific board questions on the city school solar lease at the landfill?
I guess I do have one question I'd like to get a perspective, and that is, do you have information that could tell us how much power we use, how much energy we use, and how much energy the city uses, and how this, I think I understand the proposed allocation, but what I don't have a good feeling for is what the relative use rates are between the city and the district. Is that known?
So, yes. Yeah. So the city uses approximately $500,000, between $450,000 and $500,000 worth of power every year, and you use approximately $385,000 worth of power per year.
Do we pay the same rates?
Rates vary across the board. So what a rate generally is a demand rate, meaning that we have an industrial. We're purchasing power. Probably the school and the city are purchasing power at the industrial rate of power. However, the credits are granted at the residential rate. So as opposed to the volume, it's the amount that we're spending is what the credit is credited against, because it's a monetary credit against what we would be paying for what we're purchasing. Does that make sense?
And do the credits come in kilowatt hours, or do they come in dollars?
In dollars. So we receive a specific amount of money per kilowatt hour that is generated, and that money is based on the residential rate. So what a resident would pay for kilowatt hour, that's what we receive. And then we also receive for 10 years a solar adder, which is, so the residential rate is 15 cents, the solar adder is an additional 4 cents. So for 10 years, we would be receiving 19 cents. And then the subsequent 10 years, we would just receive the residential rate. The residential rate is what it can change. And I think earlier someone said there's no risk. That's actually not true. There is some risk. If the rate for electricity drops, on average over 20 years, and my rough calculations is if it drops more than a negative 0.1% over 20 years, if that's the average change in the rate over that period of time, then we would end up paying. Otherwise, it's a wash. And then if it's zero, it's a small gain, and so on and so forth. So.
You mean negative 0.1 per year annual decrease? Is that
Yes.
what, I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
What's the historical average?
So the historical average is between is it?
A long-term average is just about 4%.
Increase.
Increase per annual.
Annual. And it's certainly not a linear scale. You know, there'll be a couple of years where the rates will be flat, and then you'll get a 9% rate increase request from GMP.
And currently there's a discussion of a decrease right now. Now the rate that is being offered to us through this, from Encore and Infinity, is that we would receive considerably above. So we would receive 17 cents, and we would be paying 17 cents and be receiving 19 cents. So the amount of decrease that is being discussed would not mean that we would end up being in the negative. So.
And Jay, can you share with us
Yep.
when your capital investment is paid for, when that's projected to be paid for, and when you switch to operating costs purely?
Solar projects are complicated financial structures due to the tax incentives involved. There's some tax credits up front that are based on the total cost of the project, and then there's some accelerated depreciation. You know, this is about a 7-year payback for the investors. I mean, that's generally kind of in the realm of where things are at. So, I mean, if I could just suggest in simple terms, we see this offer as a hedge. We firmly believe that electric rates are going up. The Department of Public Service believes that electric rates are going up. We have, you know, by our calculations, if it is 60% of the value of the electricity goes to the city, 40% goes to the school district, you know, we think that's going to address about a quarter of your electrical demand, so 25%. So you've essentially locked in 25% at a fixed price. And if electricity rates go up, you're saving money, as we convey in the table in the FAQ document. If rates go down for some reason, well, that's great. 75% of your electric costs just went down, and you've hedged that 25% at a rate that we think is still a pretty good opportunity. We are interested in working with the city and the school district. You are obviously long-standing electrical customers. You're very financeable, and you're going to be around we need a 20-year contract to make these things work, because after the tax credits are taken, it's kind of a long, you know, the cash flows take a while to play out. So, you know, in exchange for your electric demand and your credit worthiness, and your ability to withstand some legal costs to get through the negotiations on a net metering credit purchase agreement, which is another word for a power purchase agreement. We you know, see the opportunity to save you a lot of money on your annual electric bill.
And what is Encore's corporate structure?
We are an LLC.
Okay.
We would be. It's if you're getting to kind of who would finance this group. You know, there are a lot of tax equity finance groups that are cropping up in the solar space. We've been talking to some of the big ones. You know, these are the Sun Edisons of the world, the Solar Cities. They all want to do business in Vermont, and they look at us as local experts in the development process. So, in other words, there's a complicated interconnection process that we need to get through. There's a complicated Section 248 process that we need to get through to receive the certificate of public good. You know, there's definitely some risk associated with the development of the project, but we isolate you from that. You know, should we get to the finish line and be able to construct a project, you're saying you will, you know, pay for those net metering credits at a discount relative to their value.
And you mentioned another organization, Infinity, is that?
That's the financer. Right.
Okay, the financer.
They were acquired by Sun Edison.
Oh, sorry, Sun Edison.
You said something about legal costs.
Sure.
What estimate?
Yep. So there would be, a few agreements in place because the city controls the property. There would be a lease agreement that would be in place with the city, and the city would have a net metering credit purchase agreement for X percentage of the value of the net metering credits or the electricity that's produced. You also, the school district would also enter into a secondary net metering agreement or a power purchase agreement. It's a legal contract that sort of spells out the responsibilities of us to deliver you guys the electricity and for you guys to pay us for the delivery of that electricity. It's a standard legal document, but it does, we have found, folks that are parties to our agreements want to have some legal representation to sort through that agreement and make sure that your interests are met and that you all understand what you're signing on to.
So you might want to give them a sense of the other schools and cities that you've already worked with, that this is not a new area for you.
Yeah, this is, South Burlington is unique because we can do a big one on the landfill, and that was the result of recent legislation that just went through this past session. Currently, the cap for net metering projects is 500 kilowatts, but on municipal landfills, we can go up to 5 megawatts. You don't have the capacity for 5 megawatts. We think it's somewhere in the 1.5 to 2 megawatt range. Once we get all of these agreements signed, then we can begin that development, the design process in earnest, and really understand exactly what size project we're talking about here. But Linda's point is that a lot of other communities have signed on to these agreements. The solar industry has really kind of come of age over the last 3 or 4 years, where we are seeing much more competitive pricing here, and you're seeing financeable entities like municipalities and school districts jump on board because the financing community wants to do business with a long-term entity. It's a lot easier to finance a school district or a town than it is a business. And the incentives have kind of done their job, and the pricing on the equipment is here to stay. But we're working with the town of Essex. We've worked with the city of Virgins, the town of Randolph, the town of Bennington. And if you go further afield, Massachusetts, I think they're up to 600 megawatts of solar down there. A lot of it on school buildings and on landfills and for municipal use. So it's a pretty prevalent opportunity that we're presenting here.
Yeah, and as Chad said, we have been working with Chad for several years now. Kevin Dorn had wanted to be here tonight. He had a conflict, so he wasn't able to be here. This was a project that had been proposed to us several years ago, and at that time, we looked at it. We didn't like the way it was presented to us from a financial perspective, so we did not move forward on it. And then I think this time around, enough has changed that we were able to come to an agreement on what seemed to be a workable structure for the credits and for the payments. And so I think a month ago or 2 months ago, we did bring this to the city council, and so they've signed a letter of intent, which is a non-binding agreement that we are going to work towards a legal agreement and to move forward with the process. I think that gives the investors more certainty in order to go ahead and start on the engineering work and the Public Service Board, and also to put together the legal agreement so that we can start reviewing it and do our due diligence to make sure that it still works for us. And so I think tonight you sent us the letter of intent that would be for the school district, so you would have the same deal that we would have. We wanted you as a partner, partially because we do see it, even though there is some risk, we do see it as a positive arrangement for us. And if you're sharing in it, it benefits all the same taxpayers. So, so in a way, it benefits us too. And so that letter of intent, I believe, did go out to you this afternoon. I'm not sure, but it is non-binding, and but it does show that you are interested in moving forward should everything progress the way that is still beneficial for the school.
We have a little institutional memory on this board with energy projects, notably the wood chip boiler many years back, and so I think there is a healthy it's not skepticism, but a healthy approach to due diligence. So assuming the letter is non-binding, and I'll assume that our superintendent and business manager would look into that. Are there other questions from the board relative to the specific project?
Yeah, I just a quick question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly straightforward, and I know a number of people who have looked into getting solar on their houses, and the discussion is usually they're putting all the money in to get the solar panels and such, and they're calculating when they're going to have break even on their savings, and we don't even have to have a break even, so it seems fairly kind of a no-brainer to me. Having said that, though, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way, because my next question is, I haven't heard the recommendation from the administration. I don't want to suggest that you can tell me it's not a no-brainer. I apologize for showing my hand on that, but I mean, I'd like to understand where the administration is on this proposal before we go ahead and vote on accepting this.
Yeah, again, I'm not in the, you don't pay me to be in the energy business. You pay me to be in the education business. It certainly appears at the present moment that it's a low risk issue. Through the Superintendent's Association, NORMECCIND, there is some positive support for these projects and some legal pro bono work that's available to do that. I would say to you that, again, I'm in favor. I think we need to do our due diligence briefly and ask for it to be vetted to the attorney, and that we understand that there is, in fact, as I believe there is, a no risk or low risk to us. And if that's the case, I'd be, supportive on your behalf to sign a letter of intent, allowing for then the project to begin to move forward. I think that it's in line with the city. It's not on our own. It's a city school project. And again, I think that it at this point makes sense.
Well, in that case, I'll move to support signing of the letter of intent.
Second.
Further discussion? And what I heard, David, is you wanted the letter reviewed by legal?
Correct.
Even the LOI?
Just the commitments that are there. And again, as I said, there's folks out there on our behalf through the Superintendent's Association, and John actually has helped with a little bit of that quick research for me on just getting that legal support. So I would utilize them just to take a look at. They did send it. I have not really had the chance to read it. It came this afternoon, I think. So, and it's not in front of the board.
Let me amend my motion to, once it passes legal muster with whatever due diligence you need to do, then we support signing the letter of intent.
I'll amend my second too.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with us on that question. Appreciate that.
All right, now we'll move on to agenda item 8, an update on the methadone clinic appeal.
And again, just the quick version is the Supreme Court, since our June 11th meeting, did make a ruling, and the district did not prevail. And I know, Elizabeth, maybe you wanted to say a few words.
Yeah, if I could make a couple of comments. This has been a fairly long process in terms of the appeal. The board has been unanimously in favor of pursuing our due diligence on the location of the methadone clinic in such close proximity to the schools, and continues to have some concerns about the increased risks. However, as the board has always contended, we do support treatment, and our primary concern has always been about the safety of our staff and students. We recognize that we have taken the due diligence process as far as it is legally allowed at this point. We do believe that the investments that the district has made in safety and security precautions, as well as the work that our neighbor at the Howard Center has done to ensure continued safety and security of our students, has resulted in no incidents in the past operating year, school year, and that is a notable observation. So at this point, we're closing the matter out, and we intend to be good neighbors, and we do feel like we have done due diligence on behalf of the district in this matter. Any other comments?
I guess I had just one question, if we should have the, David or the administration, make sure that the planning commission understands that there has been a ruling, because I know they've held up consideration of certain aspects of the proposed school safety zone, awaiting this decision,
Okay.
so.
So David, will you? Great. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 9, superintendent's report.
I have one item in front of you, and this is a return from the previous meeting, the June 11th meeting, the big picture enrollment. I did include and also by your side is, or in your place, is some additional information about the big picture program. And just a quick summation of that. Currently, we have 22 students that are enrolled that are SB residents and or are paying. We have 1 new applicant, SB applicant. We have 4 non-residents, non-paying enrolled that have been enrolled in the 13-14 that are likely going to matriculate, for a total of 27. And then the recommendation currently that I'm proposing in front of you is that we, again, with our cap of 30, we have 3 non-paying pending applicants that are currently in hold for the 14-15 school year. And again, a further note here for me is that as John reported for me, on behalf of kind of the financials related to this, it equates to 23.5 students for us in the break-even category. And I think, we need to be mindful in the future that we monitor the kind of that 24 mark in our out years. And my recommendation is that you allow me to come back and kind of plot this out in the continued out years. And I've also, as you know, allow me to continue to dialogue about receiving resources that support our students that are non-SB, non-paying.
And I had a question on the break-even analysis. The assumption is that the operating costs are fixed. Is there a scenario where we would reduce the operating expenses associated with the program?
Well, there's 3 teacher FTEs involved, and negotiations would say typically they would go up. So this is based solely on the 15 budget. The only scenario would be if we had a teacher who left, and we hire a teacher that takes a different set of benefits. So the idea is, what's the break-even point right now?
With the current staffing level?
Yes, with the current budget, yeah.
Is there a scenario where this would be staffed at a different level, so we're not having the discussion about
23.5
right
versus something more? I think these are opportunities for discussion. I mean, I don't. It's obviously been staffed through a variety of needed resources. So at the present time, it's needed 3. Can that be reevaluated and looked at? Absolutely, and it should be on a regular basis. So
What has the enrollment history been?
We've been right around that 30.
For South Burlington, I meant to ask. South Burlington resident.
Yeah, again, I don't have that exact number. We've never been 100% 30, us. We've been, I think, as low as somewhere around the 19, 20, 21 range for SB. But remember, this was at a time when we also had resources following the students.
Right.
The applicant pool that typically comes to us has not been. Again, there's an application process, and then we make sure there's the right match. Typically from South Burlington, we haven't had really enough of the right match to make that kind of that 30 work, right? And so, again, I did go out and have communicated both through email and in person with the superintendents. And obviously, when I'm communicating with them, it's, that's not something that we budgeted for. Certainly through our Act 129 discussions and future governance questions, they're certainly willing to be at the table. And again, I've also been in contact with the Agency of Education around how this could qualify for, perhaps something different than the standard choice option.
Well, and
we're
when you're
looking at-
saying they haven't budgeted for it, they would be getting the credit for the student enrolled in their district
Correct.
and not incurring any expense.
That's right. So basically, they want to keep that within their,
Right.
within their
So to say it's not
budget.
budgeted is
Right.
a little,
Average daily
misleading.
membership, in the way in which that's calculated, they would be getting that. That's correct. And they'd be hanging on to it.
yeah, this is a really tough discussion because it's what I think the state intended with legislation to improve school choice is further limiting it for these students who are going to be most successful in an alternative environment that has proven successful with a number of students. I know some of my concerns are really that it's not just a one-year commitment. When you have somebody coming into this program as a freshman, you really are committing to a 4-year program by student. I also think without the ability to negotiate, even if it's a modest stipend per student, it sets the precedent that there is not going to be a transfer of funds. So some of my questions would really be, should we accept the recommendation but only do it on a 1-year basis and say we're going to go back and negotiate with the sending districts for the second year of this program, recognizing that until we get some momentum from either the residents of another district that are going to push their district to have this conversation or come to the table and have it, that it's South Burlington is completely on the hook for this, or should we say we're going to put a very modest charge out there, say $3,000, which is a fraction of a student FTE, and say I don't know if we have a waiting list beyond the 3 that are here, but do we say we need to put some kind of stipend in place that is a fraction of what the sending district is going to receive for the student that they won't be educating, and say acceptance is contingent on those dollars being freed up? I'm really just offering some alternatives.
It's hard, it is a difficult discussion because we want to welcome our neighbors and other communities into this amazing program that we have in South Burlington. I think that if we limit anything, it would, rather than to a 1-year commitment to a student coming, cap the number of students to allow the students that we accept to matriculate all the way to graduation. I would hate to let a student come in for only 1 year. I mean, they've made a big decision to transfer out of a traditional program, so I would worry about that student if we could only commit to them for 1 year.
Are the, excuse me, are the 23 students that we have from South Burlington, assuming this new applicant gets accepted, are they evenly distributed among the classes?
The grades.
Grades, yeah.
I know Delina, who is my right-hand person on this one.
My worry is
Yep.
that we're going to get down below critical mass in South Burlington and have obligations to other people.
Agreed.
And,
You end up having more
and
than
we end
half.
up subsidizing more
Yeah.
than we think we're subsidizing.
And if we cap it, again, my preference would be to reduce the number in a way that they can follow the whole process and complete their schooling versus.
Have no new students accepted.
Right, and that
First.
said, when it says that the break-even point is 23.5, and we currently have 22, plus 1 new SB applicant, has that SB applicant been accepted into the program?
Well, they're a new applicant right now,
But
and so
they're not
we're
currently
awaiting.
enrolled.
Right,
In
that's
process of
correct.
being accepted, as I understand.
Right, so the 22 is not a break-even, and even with that new applicant, it doesn't meet our break-even.
Right, and so if our numbers are below the 24, we're we're not breaking even. But
So-
again, this is a service to students, and we
Right.
typically haven't gotten into, a
Right.
cost-benefit analysis on all of our program offerings,
Well, I guess I question along the lines of the cost-benefit analysis. On the benefit side, I know last year we talked about how the program's richer with 30 students. But my question would be, well, how much less rich is it if we downsize from 3 staff members to 2 staff members and we have 20 students, all South Burlington? I know that would have to be phased in since we already have 4 non-residents. I mean, is this program doable with a smaller staff and fewer students?
I think those are some of the things that you need to challenge me on around the move forward, because we've got resources following students, ? State. We have the desire, again, if that's shared by everyone, around making sure students who start matriculate through. The size of staff to support, the 30 or the 25. We do have the ability to set the cap at what we wish. Again, 5 is not really appropriate for the experience in which we know is they're looking for, 5 students. So what that number is, I could not sit here and tell you, and that would be something that would need to come from the staff, whether it is the 25 or 22 you indicate, that could be 2 staff, or how does that metric work? Did you guys have a chance to, on the numbers?
We do. They're a little complicated, but in the freshman class, there are 3 residents and 2 awaiting approval who are non-residents. So there's 5 kids in the freshman class. Overall, there are 21 SBHS students and 3 awaiting approval. 1 paying from, that's been grandfathered in there, that's paying from outside, and 4 non-paying in this total. You can go through class by class. In this sophomore year, we have some people halfway through too, so.
Some are like 10.5 or 11.5, so they're in between years.
So there are 10 sophomores if we count the person that's half a semester ahead. 4 are non-paying and 6 are paying. Of our juniors, there's 7, and 6 are residents and 1 is paying in that grandfather status. And in the seniors, there are 7 seniors. 1 who's awaiting approval, non-paying, right? Yes. And the rest are all paying tuition.
That's 6 SB.
Yes.
So one of the 3 new people would be here for just a year.
That's right. Yeah.
Is it typical that the freshman year is undersubscribed to the 6 norm?
Well, in this mix here, the sophomores, there are 3 new people. So people do come to the program after freshman year.
Yeah, actually, Dan, originally they didn't accept freshmen in the program. It started as a sophomore program. As it's expanded over the years, it's been clear that there are freshmen who really should.
Well, I wonder if one additional thing we can do is that we won't approve non-paying freshmen. We'll just start at sophomores. But I guess this year we would lose 2 people that we might want to have in the program, but.
Yeah, I think when we get to the stage where we have specific applicants who've been accepted to the program, I think that's the toughest time to be making these decisions on the overall funding of the program and the kind of the strategic approach going forward. So as Diane said, I do, all of us have had exposure to the program and have seen the real benefits for students, some who are at risk and many who, have a strength in learning in this experiential environment. So we don't want to deny that to anybody when we have a great resource here. But I think we have to acknowledge that the South Burlington community is subsidizing right now, based on Act 29, the education of non-resident students in this program, and figure out what that means going forward.
It seems to me that a prudent action would be to advise all new applicants that get accepted that this program is at risk if they're not South Burlington residents, and that we're going to look at this on a yearly basis until it stabilizes. I mean, it's just, I thought, to me, it's not responsible to find ourselves in a situation where we're subsidizing other districts' educations for.
Diane, I know your comment was accepting somebody in, committing to the 4 years, but there's a potential scenario in here where we could have 4 or 5 non-residents, in the 4th year of this program, and the district would be absorbing all of that. For that smaller group of people. And I think that's the challenge with making a full 4-year commitment when we really don't know what the demand for the program is going forward with SB residents.
Or, I mean, it's not necessarily a 4-year. It could be a 2-year or 1-year commitment, or just seeing it through to the end and completion.
I certainly understand the merit of that argument. I just don't think it's fiscally responsible.
I think it is if we limit the number. I mean, it's just capping it differently instead of committing to, I'm not using these numbers, but instead of committing to 4 students, each of them for 1 year, you commit to 1 student for 4 years, or you know what I'm saying? So it still has a limiting factor, but it's allowing a student, we're telling that student that you're committing to this program, and we're committing to allow you to complete it.
Lessen the exposure.
It's just a different capping kind of thing, really.
It's bounding the risk. I understand. It's bounding the financial risk. That's what you're suggesting.
Well, I'm saying,
you're limiting how bad it could be from a financial standpoint.
I would like to support any student that wants to come to a really innovative program in Vermont, and it's really disappointing that there's not support out there beyond this community to make that happen. What I'm concerned about is that, and I understand that, we have to be fiscally responsible, but I think we have to do it in a way where if someone commits to the program and we allow them to come to the program, we need to let them complete the program. And if that means if we can't take 4 kids, we can only take 1, then we should take 1 and let them complete the program. And so it's still limiting access, but it's allowing someone to complete a program. I don't know. It's not an easy conversation or with an easy solution.
No, it's not, and I think you even with the legislators yesterday, this conversation came up. I don't know, I can't remember who brought it up. But it is a big issue, and the resourcing, and this is a little bit different in the Act 129 choice piece, in that this is a specialized program, and I do believe that there's a solution out there for an interagency agreement or something that can happen, and as Elizabeth said, maybe at a lesser rate, or a negotiated amount.
Well, we should look for other solutions.
Absolutely.
The question is what to do in the short term and the immediate thing, and can we really responsibly make a 4-year commitment to a large number of students? It's 4 right now, I guess, potentially. Okay.
Is it 4 or 3? It's really 3.
4 currently and 3 pending, and one of the pending is 1-year commitment.
Well, the action that administration is looking for is a commitment to 3 new non-paying applicants for the 2014-15 year, and one of them would be in the program for 1 year.
Correct. Is that right?
So is there a motion to accept the administration's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay.
I didn't vote.
Oh, you didn't vote.
I didn't vote, I abstained.
So you need to, we
No,
only
if you
have,
abstain, you don't.
but we only have
Doesn't
two
have to
votes. Don't you have to have three to carry?
And I will vote affirmative on that. Sorry, Dan, I did not see the abstention.
I do have some directions from you on this. I mean, I inherently understand some, some possible next steps on this, so, superintendents, legislature,
Mhm.
individual ideas in negotiating, with possible other interagency agreements will be explored. Or are being explored currently.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 10, common roots.
So, welcoming, this is terrible that I can't. Kendall, and I have to say Kendall, who's part of Big Picture, I've also seen her on our girls JV softball coach, and she definitely brought some positive experiences to our girls in the middle school, and thank you for that, but welcome.
Thank you for allowing us to present tonight. My name's Kendall. I work for Common Roots, and I also work in the school district as the 7th, 8th grade softball coach for the past 2 years, which has been a blast. I just wanted to come and introduce myself. I've managed the farmers market for the past 2 summers, this summer being the 3rd, and in the fall, I guess actually in February, Carol and I began co-directing our nonprofit Common Roots together. And so I wanted to come and give you our end of the year program update. There's information in the packet. I don't know if you folks have had time to read over it or not. But we can start with the Farm to School program. That's our education for kids K through 5th grade. There's a specific food education lesson prepared for every classroom on a monthly basis throughout the course of the school year, and we just wrapped up our 4th year of that program. And one exciting piece of news about that program is that the Orchard School, there's been a team of 2 teachers, an administrator, and then an outside community member, as well as Rhonda Kettner, the Food Nutrition Service Director. They have formed a team and applied to the Farm to School Institute, which is an institute offered through Shelburne Farms, Vermont Feed, which stands for Food Education Every Day, and NOFA Vermont. It's a year-long commitment to increasing the cross-curriculum integration of farm-to-school education in conjunction with the Common Core and the Next Generation Science Standards. So they've taken the lead on forming that team together and going to be part of the Institute. And in talking with Rhonda yesterday, she wanted me to present to you folks that they still have one opening spot on their team for an outside community member. And so if anybody's interested in taking part in that, please let me know before I leave, and I'll let Rhonda know. The Farm to Go program, we just successfully wrapped up our 4th year of that as well. It's the Young Chef Training Program that happens here at the middle school for grades 6th through 8th. Carrie Town has been an integral part of supporting that program over the last 4 years. She recommends students for that program, and it's a series of 6 lessons over a 6-week period, meeting once a week, and the students prepare their food and then go home with a dinner for their whole family each Thursday night at the end of that. And then every 6 weeks, the group of students changes. So the last session this year, Carytown was able to be with us for those last 6 weeks, and so that was really fun to have her have that FaceTime with the students and with the program that she's been supporting. And she can speak volumes to the success of that and the student engagement in that. The local food production, which is also on your sheet, is our half-acre plot with 35 raised beds on the farm at South Village, the South Village housing development on Spear Street there. they have a farm there as well as part of their agri-hood development plan. And they've allowed Common Roots to have a half-acre plot there with 35 raised beds. This spring, we had 2 field trips out there for a total of 5 classes, 2 fourth grade classes from Chamberlain, and 3 kindergarten classes from Orchard. I was able to be out there for the kindergarten day, and I can tell you it was a really big blast. We planted a bunch of tomato plants with the kids, as well as did a bee lesson, and then there was exploration of beneficial versus non-beneficial insects in the garden environment and the adjacent woods, looking at them as a habitat as well as ecosystem. So understanding the full picture out there at the farm with the kids, and then we had a lot of conversations about them planting the potatoes as kindergartners, and then in the fall time as first graders coming back to harvest their potatoes that they planted, and they're all very excited about that. So I can tell you about how that goes in the fall time. The CSA, some of the food that comes off of those 35 raised beds goes to our CSA members. The CSAs are free CSA shares that we give away to families in the South Burlington community who are identified by the social workers and the school nurses in each of the district schools as facing food insecurity for their families over the summertime. And so we provide 35 free CSAs, and they pick up at the South Burlington Farmers Market on Sundays. If you haven't had a chance to come to the farmers market yet, my shameless plug, you should come. It's 10 to 2 every Sunday, and it's a whole lot of fun. This year we've had the largest number of participating families in that program, and we're working up to having every family come every weekend. We're really trying to get those numbers there. And we have 2 high school students whose families receive CSA shares, but they're volunteering with us at the farmers market every Sunday, which has been a really fun addition to further engage those families in the community and in the food system.
I don't know if I can ask.
Absolutely.
You say that there's 7 families that are currently getting this benefit from the CSA share?
35 families.
35?
Yep. 7 are
So
chosen
5 by
from
7,
each
is that what
school.
it is? 5 by 7? 5
Yeah.
schools, 7 each? Now you
Mhm.
get 35?
Yep.
Is the demand significantly higher than that?
Yes, our understanding from the social workers is that there are a large number of families that could benefit from this program, but we are balancing our costs right now, so it's as big as we can currently make it, but we hope to expand, and we have expanded it over the past 4 years. We originally started with 15 families receiving it. The POP Club stands for the Power of Produce Club. It's open for kids ages 5 through 12, and it also takes place at the farmers market on a Sunday basis. This is our 2nd year running that program, and last year, after 20 weekends of the market, we had 104 club members, which we were thrilled with. And this year, after 3 weeks of the market, we have 135 members, which speaks volumes to the demand for this type of education within our community. The children drag their parents to the farmers market on a Sunday basis, and really have chosen to continue their engagement in food education even through the course of the summer while school's out. They come to the market and receive a taste test and then a little food education activity, a quick one. This past week was on asparagus, and they tried fresh asparagus, the tops versus the stems. And then they receive a $3 token, which allows them to be engaged in their own food system with their own buying power. And the statistics have shown that children are a lot more willing to try food if they're the ones who have picked it out themselves, and then hopefully are engaged in the preparation process at home as well. Which leads us to the farmers market. We have an ever-increasing patron number there. It's a community service that we provide. It's just across the parking lot here in the green space next to the front of the library and high school. And we have a video that was just finished this past week by a volunteer videographer in the South Burlington community. He's a father of a POP Club member, and so that'll be on our South Burlington Facebook page this coming week if you want to check that out. One of the other things that I'd like to just share with you folks and highlight is our support and partnership with regards to the food nutritional service department here. Last year, we received a gift from a family foundation in this area of over $30,000 to support the food nutrition services here, and Rhonda chose to use that money to update the equipment in many of the kitchens within the district to increase the capacity for fresh production or production of fresh produce from around this area, trying to transition more and more to the really fresh, chopped, processed, local food on the menu to feed our children nourishingly so that they can continue their attention in scholastic, extracurricular, and sports activities. And this year, for the 2014-2015 year, we again received a $20,000 gift from that same foundation to support the nutritional services again. I want to thank you personally for all of the past and present school board members' support, as well as the administrative support over the past 4 years as our nonprofit has got to where it is now. And what I see the benefit of nonprofits being in our culture is that we fill the niches where the public sector and the private sector don't fill. And so I see us as the lubricants to the machine and the opening the bottlenecks and allowing things to flow more easily and efficiently and smoothly. So I feel that our partnership with the public school system is a very important one, and I think that over the next couple of years we can continue to grow it and capitalize on the potential there more. So I'm personally excited about that. And the last thing that I just want to share is that in the fall time, now that our nonprofit is 4 years old, we'll be having a board meeting this fall that will be open to community members. And so I invite all of you to come share your thoughts and ideas with us as to the direction of our nonprofit, because we are in service to the school district and the next generation of our community members coming through. And so we would greatly appreciate any of your thoughts or ideas at that board meeting. So if you're interested in joining us for that, again, I can take contact info so that I can formally invite you via email as we clarify a date for that. I'd be more than happy to take any questions, comments, or concerns.
I just want to add to, this program has been in existence for 4 years, and Carol was mentioning the program at our in-service at the elementary schools yesterday. And the teachers were just so overwhelmingly appreciative of something that 4 years ago they didn't even know they needed to appreciate. It has really become really part of our elementary education, and a real opportunity for kids to have a better understanding. And also, I think it leads to, as proven, better nutrition, and the kids being willing to try things and learn about foods that they might not have the opportunity, so that when we do serve them through nutritional services, there's a more of an open mind, and it's just great.
Thanks. The POP group, is there an age range of participants?
It's currently open for ages 5 through 12. The club was started at the Oregon City Farmers Market, and 2 years ago, or last winter, I guess, not this past one, but the prior one, I was on a webinar where the inventor of it was talking to market managers from across the country. So currently South Burlington is one of 2 Vermont farmers markets that have it. It's us and Winooski, and we both started it last summer. So it's open ages 5 through 12. It's currently funded by sliding scale donations or sliding scale fees from families when their children sign up. If a child is present to all 20 markets, they will receive $60 over the course of the summer. And our sliding scale, the most we ask for from a family is $25 for their child to participate if they make over $40,000 a year. We would love to open it to a larger age group. We know that there are little siblings who really want to be part of the club, as well as older children who have been able to and then graduate out of the bracket. And so with further funding, we look forward to being able to increase that. I should also mention that it's not only reliant on the sliding scale fees, it's also made possible by private donations from community members or through people sponsoring a child for the summer. Yeah.
Couple questions or issues. First, very narrowly, I didn't make it to the market last week, but the first 2 weeks I was there, the first week there was somebody who was a forager and had great stuff. Is he coming back? I don't know. Maybe he was there last week. It's my personal question.
Yeah,
I guess.
absolutely. He wasn't
That is
there.
not a policy question.
That's not a policy. Okay, all right. Forget that. I can catch that later. All
Okay,
right, here's
he
the
is coming
policy.
back.
All right, excellent. His ramps were
have to use a gavel.
top notch, and he gave me a good deal. He didn't even know I was on the board. So I have first of all, I am a big supporter of Common Roots, and there's one issue that I want to make sure I need to air and make sure there's an understanding, and that is, I think a lot of people think that Common Roots is the school district, and I know there's a lot that Common Roots does with the school. Obviously, that's a very prime part of the mission, as I understand it. But there is a problem if there is that perspective, because if it's considered part of the school, if it really is kind of holding itself out as being part of the school, we have policies regarding fundraising. There are various policies that, if somebody thinks that Common Roots it's the school coming and asking for donations and such, then that person would have an expectation that we are watching the finances, we are making sure the fundraising is legitimate, etc. So I just want to raise that as an issue that I have seen out there. I mean, I understand where Common Roots is in the scheme of things, I believe, but so.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my learning curve since February 1st, when I took this position, has been steep. And that's one of the pieces that I've identified since I came into this role of an area that we need to focus on rebranding ourselves, if you will. I think there is some misconception within South Burlington, within school faculty and staff at different schools, not Orchard, because things are pretty much squared away there, but at some of the other schools as well, but also in the larger community. And so that is one of my projects that I'm championing in this first year. But I can see how that would be concerning for you folks as well with regards to fundraising rules and whatnot. When I go out and talk about Common Roots, at no point do I say we are part of the school district. We have 6 programs, they're standalone programs. You folks, the school is gracious enough to allow us to come in and partner with you and do some of the education in the school system, which is wonderful for us and hopefully for you as well. But certainly not selling it as a program of the school district or, yeah. So if you have
a parallel that I think would help. So the ways in other Vermont schools that there are outside organizations supporting everything from understanding sustainability. So for example, the Sustainable Academy that was the former Wheeler School in Burlington, they have a direct partnership, and so we don't even call it a partnership because we are a nonprofit that supports the education in classrooms based on Farm to Go was planned with the principal, a school nurse, and the PTO here. So we didn't even plan Farm to Go ourselves. We planned it with Karsten, with the school nurse, Carrie, and with one of your PTO members in the middle school at that time 4 years ago. I don't even remember who that person was. So it was based on a need, and so that Farm to Go program happened based on a conversation. The social workers, when they knew that we had a capacity to grow food, the social workers were like, can we have some of this for our families in need? And so we actually started with 11 families, then 15, and now we're at 35. And so that came from the social workers saying to us, if you're growing food, is there a way you can serve the families who need it the most? And that's how that happened. So the parallels that I think are other models out there that have some similarity, Shelburne Farms partners with the Sustainable Academy to look at the themes of sustainability in integrated curriculum. So direct service comes from Shelburne Farms to that school and other schools. And then another parallel would be Vermont, what is it called? Vermont, I'm sorry, it's FEED, Food Education Every Day, is a nonprofit organization that's a subset of NOFA, Northeast Organic Farmers Association. And FEED is in, I don't know how many schools in the state of Vermont, many, many. The challenge from my lens as a teacher is they're in schools and then they're gone. And so the sustainability of growing kids with furthering their knowledge is dependent on the whole community of teachers keeping the ball rolling. And as Stuart and I have had many conversations, not so recently, but in the past couple of years, ideally, our farm-to-school food education would be actually over time, after these science standards get rolled out, the next generation science standards, and people know their curriculum well, because it does go deeper and there's much more systems thinking, problem solving, cause and effect, the higher level thinking. Somewhere down the road, we should be configuring, or we should figure out all these talented teachers who've now had 4 years of Common Roots lessons. We might be thinking about down the road, how do we provide the food for them and the lesson and give them the frame time if Rhonda still wants that and the principals still want that. How do we provide the food and the framework for the lesson and let the education go through the regular classroom and only support teachers who still don't feel secure in teaching food, or brand new teachers who don't have any prior knowledge. So it doesn't mean that we're here forever, because actually Heinsberg and Winooski, principals and superintendents have said, when can you come to our schools? And our work isn't deep enough here to like leave and have it carry on. So we'd rather go deeper. It's a little bit like what Diane was saying about you know, the big picture. You'd rather see one child go through and be successful than have lots of children that you might not be able to sustain their being in a program. It's a little bit of a parallel. So we're not necessarily in South Burlington forever, but I think the work has really just begun with Rhonda's reorganization and willingness to work with local farmers, and she envisions down the road that somehow, somewhere, probably won't be on our campuses, having spoken to John about the limited space that we actually have and the impact fees of more permanent structures, but down the road, Rhonda would want to see food production, whether it's in conjunction with middle, high school, or a combination, whether it involves kids with learning impairments who need life skill, a combination. It's just very preliminary thinking. So does that help you? Or is that more information than necessary?
All right.
So addressing, you know, wrapping all of that into, we completely understand the misconception that some people have of Common Roots as the school district and as one of the programs in the same way as a Big Picture is, or others are, and that's one of the things that we're working to kind of disband that myth, if you will, and to create that larger separation.
Unless there's any other questions, thank you for your good work, your contributions, and we're a little behind on our agenda, so we're going to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item 11, admin report.
Organizational structure. Again, I think this can be brief. It's in your packet. It's really there just to provide you, you know, kind of some evidence of our continued work. I think important for you to know that this is an important piece for us as we look at those required and mandated pieces and the infrastructure needed to carry out those systems, and also our wants. So as I said to you before, that's kind of the methodology that we're going with, knowing what we have, looking at what we need to be doing, and do we have the right systems and structures in place. So I feel, you know, positive that we have these now more clearly articulated, and we'll be using them, and certainly we can look them over, but again, this is our organization.
I noticed that Eric Stone wasn't under Patrick Burke. Was they have its own special page somewhere.
I don't know, we probably left them off. I would hate to say that to Eric.
That I did look
Look, that's
Very
good.
attentive.
We'll have to, again, this is, as you know, a fairly active document, or could be. To take it down to this level was a challenge, and again, part of it is to have our systems embedded where we don't, it's not a chore, but, yeah.
I thought it was very helpful.
Is he off there?
You don't see me there anymore.
All right. Well, no offense to Eric, we apologize for leaving him off.
But I did find this to be quite useful, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the next step to this is sort of a snapshot in time. The job descriptions, the work that's going on concurrently is sort of another layer of this. And then, really marrying that up against the work that needs to happen in the future.
So I think, again, just providing that too.
Could I, the high school page, and may just be missing it, the special education teachers?
Yeah.
I don't see them on here.
Yeah, so maybe what has happened, we got a page off here, maybe, I don't know.
It may not have copied. That could be my fault.
Oh, look. The intention here wasn't to is to show you the work
I just didn't want to-
evolving, and so, it's good that you're in touch with your staff and looking at it, so we have our continued work
So
to
we'll
do.
just make sure it
Yeah.
can stand on its own.
I
Yeah.
think it's really helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you
It is.
very much
Maybe a
for
little
putting this
overwhelming for
together.
you.
But it really provides a visual framework of this is who our district is, I really like it.
All right, seeing no other comments, we'll move on to agenda item 12.
So curriculum development and review, this is a continuation, and again, Stuart was not with us last time, but we did have some questions, and so I'd open it back up to you, or if you wish to have some more specifics provided by Stuart, that would be my recommendation.
Questions, comments? Maybe Stuart, could you just give a summary of what you're proposing here?
Sure. So 3 meetings ago, basically I went to do report 2.10, and it's a report that since the beginning has been not quite what we would want it to be, except that we can all agree that it's out of compliance. So I had proposed at that meeting that given some of the work that we've been doing, that we would come back in January with a 2.10 that would be much more in keeping with the 2 aspects of it, because we do have written curriculum, but the written curriculum doesn't necessarily reflect the ends. And to try to pretend in ways that it does, as opposed to moving it along. At that time, I believe Dan recommended that he still wanted to see some form of compliance or the word's not coming to me, but a corrective action plan. So that's what I had provided for the last meeting, and of course I wasn't here to talk about it, and it was not the full plan, because really it's to come back in January and say we're going to start over on this piece to really do it right. So in the reading the minutes, not reading the minutes, but of watching the film, one of the things was Martin had brought up that, how is a report card curriculum, how is it the ends? And so I wanted to show the direction that we're going in, first with the elementary and then over the next couple of years. So as you can see, when we're looking at reading, and in fact, we just rolled these out yesterday with the teachers, and they said it's too much information, but that we would be using the statements from the ends as kind of the headers, as it were, so that when we say that we're looking at what makes comprehension, interpretation, and evaluation of literature, which is the new Common Core standards, what we're doing is looking at comprehending, interpreting, and evaluating a wide range of written materials, resources, information, which is part of the district ends. So that's just was one strategy. It's not that that's the curriculum, but that we would begin to be collecting data, which has always been, the weakness. So that's really all it is as we come up with those pieces. My hope is that, when we report to you in January, we will have at least the direction that we want to go in. And with the last report, on the ends, you know, as a separate report, I did talk about a number of those strategies when I reported to the board, I think 4 meetings ago, so.
I guess a question. The document we received on May 7th lists a plan to come into compliance with this policy. Are we not looking at that compliance plan anymore? Because we didn't look at it then on May 7th because you weren't here, or whenever this was brought to our attention. We didn't look at or discuss the compliance plan. And I know usually, I mean, in policy governance, when we're looking at a monitoring report, if we find that it's not in compliance, or the administration initially finds it's not in compliance, it provides a compliance plan. And then we discuss whether we believe the compliance plan is sufficient. And my question after all that precursor is, are we doing that with this, or are we waiting until January to get the compliance plan?
So I created a compliance plan, which was some of the steps that we're going to take. But really, the compliance plan is this report needs to be rethought out to come into compliance. And those are just some of the steps that we're going to put into the new plan. So, you know, it's an unusual situation because people said, okay, that sounds good when we talked about it, but when I provided some of those steps, it's not attached to a plan because the plan, it's not attached to the monitoring report because except for the interpretation of the report, I don't believe really any of it's really acceptable.
Right, I understand that, and I guess the question is whether we are passing judgment or asking questions about whether we think this is a sufficient compliance plan or if we're premature for that, if that's not what we're doing.
I think that's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, we were out of compliance when we did part of the, well, I'm going to say the agreed upon step was bring it back and with the understanding that you're going to work towards comply, you know, to comply. Because of the way that we want to then move towards and present it and integrate, I guess is the right word, into the our current curriculum. So, I mean, you need to, I mean, we're out of compliance. That's in part the compliance plan.
Yeah, but I guess to cut through, I mean, on this is that if this is a compliance plan, I have a lot of issues with it. But if this is a precursor and it's first you have to figure out the whole new plan before you even tell us how you're coming into compliance.
This is a piece of that.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
Stuart, piece of working toward.
What I would like to suggest, because I think Diane and you are the board members related to this plan. I would love to meet with you many times before January to talk about ways to make this really work.
I haven't told him that yet, but I will.
David just said you've got all of us on there now.
That's fine. I'll take you all.
So it sounds like this.
Small office.
It sounds like this was more of an example of direction.
And I'm looking at the May 7th.
Oh, okay, I don't have those in front of me.
I'm not looking at the one that we got today. I was looking at the one that presented the compliance plan. But if that's defunct, and then it's not a compliance plan, and we're waiting for either compliance or a compliance plan.
Yep.
Okay.
So
I just want to be clear, though. I mean, do you want something before the January report?
That was my question. Yeah.
Well, I would love compliance.
If we don't have compliance in January, I want a much better compliance plan than what I saw in May. But so.
So when are we on?
It's actually in November.
No, I know, but I'd asked for it to be based on what we need to get done. Last year was in November. It's been traditionally in November, but I'm asking for January.
So we need to slot it in for January.
We can't do January, that's budget season.
Okay, February.
In which case it will have to be a real compliance plan.
I hear you.
Well, we'll talk more
So,
about that.
so maybe we can put an update between
Well,
now.
continually ends updates.
Yeah.
you know, because ends is bigger than just 2.10.
Yeah.
So,
Or we can have the interim step of a compliance plan before February. And I can give you my comments on what you have so far.
Okay.
Well, I think if you could
Is
give
that-
them to us, then maybe we can come back with some more definitive next steps. That might be better than.
So maybe we'll put that on a future
Mhm.
agenda then. Right. Additional questions on 2.10? All right. We'll move on to 3.2. Just a quick update that the board has had an opportunity to meet with David and provide some feedback relative to accountability and execution of our ends policy. And there will be further action in the future, but I think suffice to say, I think the general feedback was really around continued focus around metrics associated with the ends, and on continued effective delegation, which the board feels that David's doing a good job of, and leveraging the talents of a strong administrative team. So unless there's anything else. All right,
Thank you.
we'll move on to agenda item 13, the RFP for audit of teacher performance evaluation practice.
Can I come right out and just make a motion? Am I allowed?
I think there are some of us
Or
who
do we
haven't
need to-
really heard the,
Well, I can make the motion, and then we can have a
Okay,
discussion.
that would be fine.
Just to set it. The motion is that we accept the bid by Sarah Denny to do an audit of the teacher performance evaluation, and that we have a committee of 2 board members who will be the primary contact along with David on her work that she's going to do.
okay. Do we have a second?
Can I, before we second it, I do have a question, so I don't know how we would second it without, I just want to know you had 2 presenters, and I just wondered if you could remind us which person Sarah was.
Sarah Denny.
And for the viewing audience.
Yes, absolutely. Sarah Denny, what we are looking to do is have somebody act essentially as the school board's eyes, looking at how the performance evaluations are being done in the 5 schools. Our primary goal is really, we believe that we need to do this as part of our due diligence to look at how this very important element of how the school districts are run, that it is in fact being done right, or if there are areas for improvements, and we're using best practices for doing those performance evaluations. Oftentimes in policy monitoring, we can do a direct inspection, and we thought that this was a good place to do a direct inspection, but we can't, as board members who may hear grievances at some point by individual teachers, we can't look at the actual performance evaluations ourselves. So after a long time of trying to figure out how to do this, we've decided to try to find an auditor. And we felt that Sarah Denny had good experience, and probably one of the key factors is that we think that working with board members, because it's primarily board member driven, that she would be able to act as our eyes and give us input on where there may be issues, if there are any issues. We're not looking for issues. We don't know if there are any issues one way or another. But in any event, and she has her recommendation, her response to the RFP was for $3,000 at the high end. And we had a second proposal by an organization called Cope and Associates, and they were suggesting they were going to do a lot more than what we necessarily needed, and also was much higher cost, approximately $14,000. They're going to look into, I think, more in depth as far as what should be done, more than just acting as our eyes, acting more as really a consultant, and I don't think that's what we ultimately decided we needed at this stage. I think that explains it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further questions?
So, Martin, I take it that in your diligence in looking at this, that you're satisfied that Sarah can meet the primary demands that we're trying to get done?
Yes, yeah, I think both Julie and I sat down with her for about an hour, and she had lots of good questions for us, which showed that she was quite astute as
she
far
looks
as...
like a person that we can work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Great.
that we'll be able to work with her.
So again, the scope of this RFP was really assessing compliance with our current evaluation system. Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Great.
And along with that, Martin, are you and Julie interested in kind of following that to the next step since you've met her? And I'm just asking. I mean, or do you? Would you? Okay.
Yeah, we're absolutely willing. But if we think that there should be a different mix of people, that's fine as well. And we can, I guess, talk about how, or we can talk about that. Well, we can definitely assign Julie since she's not here. Does anybody else want to replace me? Because if anybody's dying to do it, I'm happy to step down. All right. I guess I'm drafted.
If you have time constraints, I may be willing to do that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we can decide. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 14, VSBA resolutions.
So I know this was a conversation that we've had earlier. I know, Elizabeth, you also had some additional ones that were emailed as well. I don't know that the rest of the board members had that, but in addition to the one specific to the funding that actually Martin prepared the draft for. So I don't know what the will of the board is around the submission of the resolution, but you have one in your packet currently.
Do you want to cover that?
And they are due, and for some reason I thought this was our last board meeting before they were due, but they're actually due July 25th. So there is one more board meeting. We can look at this one, or we can come back to this one on the 9th and just talk about what some other possibilities are.
Well, do you want to cover what you're proposing in this one?
Yeah, I mean, because I think it makes sense given all the conversation we had about big picture. What I'm trying to do with this is more broadly than just South Burlington, but essentially if there is a big picture type program, a school within a school, that if there's a student that transfers into that program, then money should follow. I mean, it's fairly straightforward, I think. And there's kind of precedent to that. I mean, the technical schools, money does follow. So it's not unprecedented in the way it works. And I think we can distinguish big picture. And there may be others that we can learn of through the Vermont School Board Association that would fit into this. But the key is that this is a very unique offering that, as far as we know, there's not a similar type educational opportunity in Chittenden County. But its ability to continue is potentially contingent on having money follow from those students who could use that opportunity. I mean, down the road, I mean, we're drawing for a fairly unique educational opportunity from we have in the past from all of Chittenden County and not just South Burlington, and that's what can sustain this the big picture program as far as how we see the numbers. So, but I think perhaps for the in advance of July 9th, if there's any wordsmithing that can be done by folks. But I think that's the concept. I mean, it's taking, it also is taking a more narrow approach to addressing some of the problems that Act 129 has brought up. Instead of trying to more broadly have money follow every student that comes here, which is probably a losing proposition, let's look where it makes a lot of sense for South Burlington.
Was there any consideration, at least in your dialogue with the VSBA, that Act 129 isn't effectively improving choice such that it should be reevaluated in its total?
I have not had those conversations, and certainly that may be, we may take a broad approach and then take the narrower approach. It happens that I am on the resolutions committee for the Vermont School Boards Association, so I think this is a good opportunity for us, if we have any ideas, since I'll be at the table this year. I think that's one I can write down that I can take a crack initially at drafting.
Your other suggestions, Elizabeth, I don't know if I forwarded
let
them
me,
to others.
no, I don't think those got forwarded, but let me.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, let me
if you
maybe
wish.
just, I had sent a couple options, actually being quite ignorant of the whole resolution process, but one would be to potentially propose a statewide evaluation of healthcare options to public school employees and financial assessment of such options. And
I know that's a very hot topic with the VSBA, whether we need to draft a resolution or I can have that on a list of, I'm not sure, well, we can try, certainly.
if it can just be on the list anyway, we can talk further.
Yeah.
The other one I had added was a resolution about the legislature evaluating financial impact of any education-related laws before they pass. And I don't even know how to frame that one, but
I think there was legislation, there is language in one of the bills that did get passed by both houses that goes to that.
Okay.
I did not remember, I don't think I remembered to bring it. I may have. Let me look while you're talking about the other ones, because I do think I brought.
okay, and then kind of, this is hand in hand with that particular one, but should there be consideration of a resolution about any legislation that would diminish local bargaining, local collective bargaining activities?
You'll have to give me more concrete ideas.
Well,
So-
specifically the employer assessment that passed, which normally might have fallen into a collective bargaining issue.
Oh, right. Well, should we have something specifically aimed at that? Or,
I guess I was thinking about it more broadly, but, why don't, these were just ideas, so maybe, given that you're on the committee, Martin, maybe you can look at, you were copied on the email, so.
yeah, I was, and I guess, well, let me ask, I would assume we would have a better chance of getting a resolution to be considered by the VSBA, including the committee, and then it's voted on in October at the Lake Maury, if we have actual language. And if you want to try to just sketch out, and then I can wordsmith it, if you can sketch out essentially, I can send you an email that well, actually you haven't. You have the basic outline. It's just kind of the topic of concern, which you already have, but just a whereas and a be it resolved. I'd be happy to do all these, but I'm going to be out of town all next week, but I'll have time to wordsmith, certainly. And I'll work on the broader resolution regarding 129.
And I guess if there is something being done at a VSBA level, I wouldn't want to be redundant to that. So if you find that out on any of the ones I've proposed.
What the process is the resolution committee gets together in late July or early August and looks through all of the proposed resolutions. And then they may also come up with the resolution themselves. And I mean, I think we'd have a better chance of being, well, let me think. No, actually, the more I think about it, because the way it would operate is that if a board presents a proposal, a proposed resolution, and the resolution committee sits down and looks at it, they can't really change it. They can say yes, or they can say no, or they can go back to the board and work with the board further if they want something to be modified. So we can perhaps skip that bit if we just go with a few ideas that can be proposed at the end. So I'm changing my mind about whether you.
Yeah, and I didn't know if this was a process where only a handful are going to make it to the end, so you kind of want to go with your most critical or material issues too.
Yeah, I don't know, not
Okay.
having done it before, so.
All right.
I guess the one question, the one further one that I would wonder if we want to propose is legislation for school safety zones. If that's something that we should propose from here. That's something that, I mean, I can.
So it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like at a minimum, we're talking about a more robust discussion in the July meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd send this to Julie, Diane, or Dan, and
So we'll
I'll send that.
some of the background, and then you folks can react to it and,
Add others if you wish.
all right.
And I'll see if I can find that language that I think already addresses one of the issues.
So we will postpone action then until the July meeting?
Mm-hmm. Just gotta put it on the future
So
agenda.
Okay.
procedurally, what happens since we have a motion open?
We don't have a motion on
There
this.
was a motion.
No.
There was no motion?
No.
I didn't start the motion that time.
No. No motion on that
I thought I
one.
heard it get seconded.
So we'll move on to 14A, the VSBA governance conversations. You wanted to add that, Martin?
Oh, yes, I did. Let me find my note about that. Well, essentially, from what I understand, they do policy governance. There's a policy governance network, so-called, and Harry Frank at the VSBA, they have meetings and then they record them. They have webinars. But this year he's going to be going out to regions, or perhaps he's taking a road show. It's unclear to me if he's going to every board or if he's going to regions or what. But he was he's asking for suggestions of what we would want to hear. And I think we should take advantage of that. If he's going to come out, we'd like to steer it towards something we want to hear about policy governance. Yeah, I mean, I would throw out for consideration a discussion of ends monitoring and how that can best be done, or the experience that others are having. There may be other ideas, but I think that's probably another thing we should take up on the 9th, and I just wanted to give a heads up to everybody that perhaps we should.
We have not been, David and I have had initially signed up to participate in these policy governance webinars, but they ended up being held primarily on Wednesday evenings, so we've had very poor attendance. I'll speak for myself at those. And Harry Frank has recognized that he hasn't had the audience that he originally anticipated with this, so he's, to his credit, he's actually kind of coming out to the boards and can serve as a conduit to other districts who are in different stages of their policy governance process. But I do think we offer a lot to, also in terms of where the work we've done. So I think it would be a good dialogue.
I think it's always helpful to kind of get a refresher on are we going into the weeds or are we staying where we're supposed to be? And it's always helpful to kind of have a refresher dialogue around that.
So we'll put that on the July 9th, or a discussion of the topics we'd like him to cover. And then he will be scheduled at a future meeting as well.
He just barely sent something out today, I noticed. And it was something in explaining what Martin said is his desire to do that, and I think he's looking for some feedback, so.
Can I just back up for 1 second? Section 68 of H884 requires the Joint Fiscal Office to prepare a fiscal note for any legislation that requires a supervisory union or school district to perform any action with an associated cost, but doesn't provide funding for, and does not provide funding for the obligation. Legislation says do this, and unfunded mandates. Okay. I don't know if that's what you were after or something.
Is it the cost of assessing it, or is it the cost of executing it?
Fiscal note for any legislation that requires a supervisory union or school district to perform any, what is a fiscal note? Would be the question.
So we might be able to seek clarification on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 15, setting the agenda for the July 9th meeting. So already I've seen we will take off the methadone clinic.
Yep.
We can put action on 3.2, David. It sounds like we would take off 2.10.
Correct.
We would add a discussion on resolutions and on
VSBA governance topics.
governance topics, yep.
Probably action on the resolutions, I would assume.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yep.
I don't know that we need to have action just on the,
Yeah, I think
on
it's
the
appropriate.
other bit.
Okay. Anything else for the July 9th agenda? You look like you're thinking of something.
Well, it's close.
Tax.
Around this time of year, there may be a time where we have quotes in, the bid would need to be evaluated and approved by the board or disapproved. And we had a challenge today for one of our projects that is going to slow it down a little bit. And so I don't, it would be on the July 9th meeting agenda normally. If that gets settled, I just want to get that possibility out of having a phone meeting or something like that. I know Martin's out of town,
Possibility to do that.
possibility.
We
Just
might need it sooner than July 9th?
yes, because
Okay.
we've stopped some processes because of the challenge, and
Okay,
it's just a possibility. We get that squared away and move it ahead.
okay.
Can I ask one other thing on the agenda?
Upcoming agenda?
The July 9th. I'm gonna be out of town, but I was planning on joining by phone. Not by FaceTime. I don't know what kind of connectivity. So is it possible to move up into the agenda, resolutions, and whatever else I absolutely should be here? I mean, nothing against the mentoring update and such, but I'm sure that's gonna be more visual than anything, and I'll probably sign off before then, and then ask Susie to forgive me later.
Comment on those.
Yeah, if that's
Yeah.
possible.
I see no reason for that. We can't do that.
Okay.
Does that include 3.2? Will that be moved ahead?
No, it can
That
stay.
probably doesn't need to be, no. Okay, agenda item 16, future agenda items. So we could add the policy governance here.
Trainings.
Is there anything on this list that we would want to move to July 9th? Which means everything's going to get another check.
Well, can I ask a question about tuition students? It's been on there so long that I'm not sure what, it says tuition students, parentheses, private paying. I'm not sure what that is because it's been on so long. It would have several check marks had we started that. Could someone tell me what that is?
It was
And
initially about, just in general, opening up a tuition option so that anyone, private paying could come in. And so we have a policy that does not allow that currently. So it would be evaluating our current policy around private paying tuition and understanding the implications of that decision. So that's really what it is.
but at this time, is that a priority of the board? Is it part of our current work? And I just want to throw that out there. Do we have a lot of demand for that, David?
Well, we don't, but I think as you look at, all of the financial implications, I would say right now it wouldn't raise to the top right now until we can, solidify some of these other pending situations, particularly on the topic of what we talked about earlier on Act 129 and big picture. Those are choice students. Those are before you enter into agreements with people who just want to pay. That has some ramifications around, the population in which you're serving, and so I think I'd keep it there, but I wouldn't make it a priority.
This predates my, it's old enough that it predates my being here, so.
I mean, that's, yeah, over a year.
So, my question is, do we have in principle the option to charge tuition to non?
Currently, you have a policy
We have a policy,
that
but,
does not allow it.
but do we have the wherewithal? I mean, are we free to change that policy and say, if you're outside South Burlington as a non-resident, you can elect to come here if you're willing to pay?
We do have the opportunity to do that. Again, there's some broad decisions that need to be
Yeah,
to look
the
at,
past,
obviously.
the past discussion on that, the policy that we have now resulted from the fact that it kind of becomes an all or nothing policy, so that if it opens up regardless of the student, regardless of their needs, regardless of.
So you can't make it conditional like the big picture thing is with admissions requirements and that sort of thing?
It's
Okay.
So again, I didn't realize it had been on that long, but is
I don't know
it,
if you're making me feel young or old.
no. But is it important enough to the work we're doing to keep it as a placeholder for over a year and not bring it to a regular agenda?
Is there something else that would prompt the administration to want to put this back in front of us? I mean, do we need to have, I mean, this is kind of something here in part so we don't lose or forget it. And is this something that some other event will motivate us to look at this again?
Well, and I
Like
think
somebody asking us.
From my perspective, Act 129 might have raised this to a level of, should we be looking at revenue sources in an environment where we're losing revenue sources?
So if it totally shuts down in the future, Act 129, interagency agreements, no, there may be a point at time where then you say, we should be considering based on, or
so,
not.
I mean, I do think between Act 129, if we really believe in the mission of the big picture program and intend to expand that at some point, would we want to include tuition paying, private paying students in the big picture program? So I think there are some drivers to keep it on the agenda, but I do think, Diane, to your point, we haven't really made it a topic, so.
And so I guess, are there, given all that you just mentioned, it sounds like there are some triggers that would put it before us if we needed to act on it or make a decision. So does it need to stay here, or is it enough to have those other triggers kind of bring it back to the forefront? It sounds like from what I'm hearing, everybody wants to keep it here. I just wanted to ask the question. So.
Would a trigger be, for instance, a resident of Washington County recently told me he or their parents would pay for 2 kids to come, one to the middle school, one to the high school. They live and work here in South Burlington, or don't live here, but work here in South Burlington. I said we don't have the capability of doing that now, but if it was a formal request, would that be enough of a trigger, for 2 kids?
Yeah, and I do think that's probably a point of discussion, because I don't think we would want to wait until we have a specific event to react to make a policy change. So my own feeling is we should be looking at, are private paying tuition students part of South Burlington's vision going forward?
Well, why don't we put this on one of the next couple meetings to at least start that ball rolling, to talk about the outlines of what this policy can be. We don't have to have a proposed new policy to just kick off this discussion.
But revisit the topic and have the discussion, and how do we handle requests that might come in?
I mean, I do think you have to put it in context of, the 129 was kids can go anywhere they want, but no resources followed.
Yeah.
And so this is in juxtaposition to that very much so, where it's like, then those that can afford to pay can come. So I do think it's under the that umbrella, as you said, under the 129, and perhaps you, maybe in your dialogue and resolution, maybe that's in part in play. Is that what they're wanting? I mean, because in part what's happened with some of the recent legislation is it's kind of forcing these types of conversations, and
yeah.
so I think maybe that could be part of the dialogue.
Well, we should start having the conversation so we can see
Yeah,
if the conversation's been forced.
All right, so it sounds like it's gonna get another check mark, but it'll stay on the list and get scheduled.
So
Or we
we'll
can
go
schedule
under
it for-
policy discussion.
Can we schedule it for August, and then we'll take it off the list? Or are we not allowed to schedule it that far in
Well,
advance?
We can certainly
We-
put it on
we-
the agenda, and we can
We have
share
some
with you the
places where
policy.
we've targeted it, for example.
Yeah, you have July 32.
Or July 3rd?
You can-
All right,
I don't think
so
it's bad that you become
let's
educated
put
a
a
little bit
date
more.
on it of July 30th
Yeah,
we're putting,
it's fine.
and then it's off the list.
Mhm.
Diane, very
Good for her.
effective.
Nicely done, Diane.
Yeah.
I have to change my, my thing from disagree to agree now on that one.
All right, move on to agenda item 17. Any comments or changes to the minutes of the June 4th meeting? Okay, seeing none, those are approved. Any comments on the June 9th meeting?
Yes, I was present at that meeting, so I'd just like the minutes to reflect that.
So with that change, those minutes are approved. And any additions on the special meeting from June 11th? And seeing none, those are approved as well. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 18. We have a consent agenda for 2 new hires, a resignation and a retirement, and a hardware internet content filter bid. Do I have,
Yeah, again, this is self-explanatory on the hires, and really a resignation, to be clear.
all right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Any questions on AP orders 46 and 47? I did not see if there were questions in the packet.
We didn't
No
have any.
questions?
No.
Okay, all right. Now, seeing none, we have a board self-evaluation. And I would encourage anyone from the community who would like to fill out a board evaluation. They're available here. Okay, could we, Diane, could you pass those down to Delina? Delina, did you make those available for anybody who wanted to?
I can right now.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah, she gave that to me before we, I just remembered it just now.
Thank you.
I didn't want to distract you.
I can do that. It's just those,
To the office.
yeah, I just gotta get one thing around.
We'll take a couple minutes while Martin collates those results.
Did we ever come up with a concept about how we could get the viewers on Channel 17 to
Oh, give feedback?
give feedback?
I don't think we did. I wish we had Steve still here. Let's mention that to David when he's back. Delina, can we have links on when the RETN replay shows? Can there be a link back to the district website?
There is a link on your board webpage.
Okay.
To RETN.
To RETN, okay. Could it
Is
go
that
the
what
other
you
way?
mean?
If somebody's watching a replay, would there be something that would direct them back to the district website to provide feedback?
That would be RETN, and I'm not sure they would do that.
Okay. All right.
Because they have many different cities meetings.
But they have headers in the front of the program that they put an agenda up, they put some other stuff up, so it might be possible to put a little statement on that if you have comments or something, visit the school website and.
I can ask them.
Dan had a question about soliciting feedback from RETN viewers on board's evaluation, so.
Well, they could just go and get the form and fill it out, send it.
It would just maybe something that when they're watching it, there might be something that would direct them to the district website.
Or at the front end of it, where they put the agenda in, maybe a little statement that says if you have comments or feedback.
Eric's a good spokesperson for RETN. Fine.
Okay, on the board evaluation, we had a disagree on the board following the principles of policy governance, and a disagree on the board's establishing linkage with or input from owners. And a couple comments that the energy proposal needed to begin with an administrative recommendation. We were 5 minutes late in starting today. And also that we probably put a little bit too much in the agenda, although it was good discussions. And there was initial confusion, and I share this comment, about what the energy team was asking the board for, although this was eventually clarified. On the superintendent feedback, there was a disagree on the data reports were provided in advance of the meeting in support of its deliberations and required action, and that comes from not really understanding that the administration recommendation was not clear initially with respect to the energy committee. It was, and their reason for being here initially was not clear, though it became clarified. There was a disagree on the board questions were first anticipated and second responded to, and also that the board was informed in a timely manner of any significant incidental information. I'm not sure what that incidental information was, though. And there was general disagreement that the agenda was followed and the adequate time allowed for board discussion with respect for the published schedule to the public. So I think we all agreed that, or disagreed as far as the agenda being.
I think that was a direct result of not having our timekeeper here.
That must have been. We will compliment. I will compliment Julie when I drop off her materials.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Okay.